What's up, my fellow creatives? Thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Max, and today I'm going to be reviewing Superman 2025. Alright, so yesterday I saw the new Superman movie, and I initially was not going to make a review of it because historically Superman is not a character I have really gravitated towards at all. I've always been a Batman guy when it comes to the DC side of things, and I always found Superman not necessarily boring, but just he didn't pique my interest for whatever reason. That changed with this movie though. Superman 2025, while not necessarily a perfect film, is my brand of Superman, whatever that is. I absolutely love every aspect of the character, from his positivity to his worldview to his strengths and weaknesses, and I think the other characters that go along with him are great additions to the story as well. Now, as I said, I went into this movie not necessarily expecting to dislike it, but every Superman appearance I had seen prior was just kind of okay. I never gravitated towards him in the CW stuff. I thought Man of Steel was an interesting take on the character, but with it being a little bit darker, I was always just kind of like, why would I not just watch The Dark Knight? And in the theatrical release of the Justice League movie, we all know what happened there. So I was very pleasantly surprised when I sat down in the theater and started watching this movie, because I instantly just felt a connection to David Corenswet as Superman. And I think a lot of that comes down to the writing of the character. I think his dialogue really shows the perspective he's coming from, in how he is both his own strength and weakness. Now, what I mean by that is this Superman is very positive and always looking on the bright side of everything for the most part, and that puts him in some difficult situations, but also gives him the strength to overcome those situations. And I really liked seeing how that very positive perspective could sway him positive or negative, even though it was intentionally meant for good. Now, some of the pros of this movie, aside from Superman, were without a doubt the supporting cast. Every character in this movie is necessary to the film, and they're all played incredibly well. I could go in depth about all of them, but some standouts are the Justice Gang, composed of Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, and Hot Girl, the Daily Planet crew, specifically Lois. And I think all of these characters are integral to the story. It doesn't feel like they're just doing universe building for the sake of universe building. It feels like they are in a world where these characters exist and they are who they are. And we see how that plays out in the movie. There are disagreements, even though they are all there for the same reason, to save and help people. And I think it's a really good way of starting this new era of DC. We're getting introduced to these characters, but they're not feeling like they are shoehorned in. I also really like Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, and while a lot of my exposure to Lex was through Batman vs. Superman, which I like Jesse Eisenberg as an actor, I didn't think his Lex was particularly as menacing as I believe the character is supposed to be. But I didn't dislike that portrayal, since I'm not super into the world of Superman. But this Lex definitely, I think, was more defined in his goals, his motivation, and you would see exactly at how far he would go to get to Superman. He, at one point, without going into too much detail, really did just kind of say, like, I don't care. As long as I get him, I don't care what I have to do to get to that point. And I think that is a great way to set him apart from some of the other villains we see in DC. I also really love Krypto. I know he was a huge part of the marketing, but I didn't really know how he was going to fit into the movie. And he is hilarious. He is, I would say, annoying to the characters in the movie at times, but as an audience member watching the movie, I really enjoyed seeing him on screen, and as someone who has a pet, could definitely relate to some of the scenes that were taking place involving him. Now, as I said in the beginning, this wasn't a perfect movie, and though I did really like it, and it is my favorite Superman movie I've seen, I do think there's a little bit of a pacing issue, and that takes place in the beginning of the film. Without going into direct plot points or spoilers, you are dropped into the movie, and there is some exposition that is given at the beginning, but you're kind of just put into it. It's not the story that will ramp up as we've seen with other superhero movies. And while I don't necessarily dislike that formula, I think it could have been done a little bit better for people who are not very into the Superman world, because while I had been doing a little bit of research going into this film, the group of people I was with were confused by how the movie started. And I think with maybe even 5 minutes of, kind of introductory beats in the story, it would have helped out the intro a lot. However, when we get to a scene of just Clark and Lois, it really just picks up and is a great movie from that point out. There's also a couple areas where the CG is a little bit noticeable, but I wouldn't necessarily fault that to the movie. We've seen that with pretty much every movie that has come out. So it's not like it's something that is a negative of this movie alone. And the last thing I want to talk about with this movie is the message. I touched upon this a little bit with my breakdown of the character of Superman, but I really, really like the message and the overarching tone of the story. This movie is about hope, strength, and positivity, and I think it thrives on that theme while showing, again, why it doesn't always necessarily work or play out the way you think it will. And it puts you in these real world scenarios in a very fictional universe to illustrate this, and it just makes you connect to these characters even more. Yes, they are fantastical characters, but you can relate to their emotions on a human level, and it just makes them a lot more compelling than they would be if the story was just going based on the overall theme of what the movie is trying to convey when it comes to this version of Superman. So yeah, overall, I very much enjoyed this movie. This is a Superman movie I can actually care about. I'm going to see it again in theaters, which I never would have said about any of the previous ones. And I actually can't wait to see this Superman again. Let me know in the comments down below if you want me to do a spoiler review of the movie, because I feel like I am tiptoeing a little bit around explaining certain things to not give any spoilers away. But yeah, Superman 2025, I would, for a Superman movie, give it a 9 out of 10, and in the overall scope of movies, I would probably give it a 7.5 out of 10. But that is very strong. I don't really give away 10s for anything other than The Dark Knight. So, yeah, I love this movie. Can't wait to see what's next for DC. I know some of these characters are going to be in Peacemaker Season 2. Absolutely love Season 1 and that character in the Suicide Squad, so I can't wait to see these stories continue even more. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.